Hi, and welcome to the Max Life Show. I'm Dr. Ben Lerner here with Cancer Killers co-author Dr. Charles Majors. We are in our Cancer Killers series, and I want to start off this show talking about sugar. We just did an article on Facebook on sugar and cancer, and it just blew up. We had over 10,000 reads and people sharing it all over the world. And it seemed to be kind of the perfect storm because it talked, of course, about how sugar makes you fat and unhealthy. It talked about how sugar causes cancer. And it also talked about the fact that if you're eating sugar and you have cancer, you're feeding that cancer and making it worse. So it became a very popular read. You know, when I was just really getting started in my career as a nutritionist, that's what I had my bachelor's degree in prior to going into chiropractic, I had met the president of the FDA who had just resigned. And he said the reason he was resigning is they had just released all these chemical preservatives into the culture, into the system legally, and he had fought it all the way because all this artificial stuff were sugar-based. And he said it would make the food virtually undigestible. And we were going to see just an avalanche of childhood obesity, adult obesity, and all these obesity-related diseases. And I'll tell you, if he wasn't right, it just took off. And then you saw this sort of rise in obesity and weight gain that really wasn't connected to how many calories we're eating. So we're eating the same amount of calories, same volume of food, but suddenly this skyrocketing obesity and, of course, things like cancer and disease of every kind has continued to get worse and worse, all about sugar.
And it's amazing to watch the amount of people who get angry about us talking about sugar. And they want to defend it. Yeah. You know, thinking that it's kind of like, you know, you're going in and talking to all these people in Colorado who, when they legalized marijuana, and they're all fighting, saying, well, marijuana is so good for you. We're not talking about cannabinoids and with cancer. We're talking about, in general, people want to fight for something we know is absolutely wrong. And when it comes to sugar...
And it does taste good.
There's no question. I mean, I haven't got to touch it in 4 and I still miss it. Like, if people say that, you know, do you miss it? I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. Like, you know, 4.5 years later, I still miss that sugar. But I enjoy living better than I enjoy eating sugar. But sugar, without a doubt, regardless of, let's say, feeding the cancer, we'll talk about that in a second, but sugar in general, as soon as we bring it into the body, begins to spike so many issues with the body. And so as soon as we raise insulin, we know, you know, there's no argument. As soon as you bring in sugar, you know, glucose, our pancreas has to produce more insulin. When we produce more insulin, we begin to produce more of the stress hormone. We throw off all of our hormonal, you know, pathways, and the whole thing gets all screwed up. So yeah. Inflammation. I mean, inflammation is the key to almost. There's not a disease process, whether it be cancer, heart disease, whether it be most of every disease you've ever heard of. Almost everything comes from inflammation, and we know sugar is one of the number one contributors of inflammation.
I think what people miss a lot too is we think eating cholesterol gives you high cholesterol, or eating bad cholesterol raises your bad cholesterol, and that's not actually how it works. No. It's carbohydrates, sugar, that actually leads to the VLDLs, which is the really bad cholesterol. That's the mechanism that makes that work, is taking too much sugar in that then your body can absorb. I think the other thing is, again, it's so tricky. So now we know the additives, the preservatives, the artificial ingredients, those are loaded with sugar. So when you read all those chemicals on your label, and then it's the fact that the carbs quickly convert to sugar. So any carb you eat, pasta, rice, bread, all of that just becomes sugar in the system also. So you might be avoiding the little white packets, but you don't realize that wheat you eat is becoming the same thing virtually instantly.
Yeah, Dr. Oz, those of you that seen the program, but that was amazing because he brought on a whole bunch of women. In day one, they were eating, you know, wheat bread and wheat bagels and whole wheats and whole grains, and they spent the day eating that. And he'd check their blood sugar level. This is all on TV. Check their blood sugar level. The next day they came in and they were allowed to eat just candy bars. So then they measured their blood sugar. And which day do you think had the highest blood sugar? It was the day eating all the grains and the whole wheats, not the candy bars. That was bad too. Yeah. But the point is that it doesn't matter whether you're going to put a grain in your body, and thank God our grains have a lot of nutrient stuff, but whether it's a grain, all carbs will eventually turn to sugar. And so it can create that inflammatory reaction. So we can not only look at sugar when we're looking at our food label, we're looking at carbs. You look at, ask my children, they know when they look at a food label before they read it, they know they don't look at the sugar, they're looking at how many carbs are in there, because it's the carbs we want to worry about.
Yeah, in fact, if you look at the glycemic index chart, wheat and many products that we consider to be healthy because they're whole grain or they're potatoes, those have a much higher glycemic index than candy. So I think we tend to miss that fact. Plus, again, it might even have low carbs, but if it's got artificial ingredients, those are loaded with sugar. So there's a lot of hidden sugars and things. Even stuff, I remember when I first looked into this and found out that ketchup had sugar. You don't realize it's in a lot of foods that you don't consider to be dessert, but yet have as much sugar as a piece of cake or ice cream.
Most ketchup is high fructose corn syrup, not even a natural sugar in it.
And that's a whole other show.
Yeah.
And what this has led to is an enormous increase in how much sugar we put into our bodies. So it's now up to 150 grams a day, which is up from 120. And when you look at the impact this has had on us, you mentioned hormones and how those hormone changes will alter our bodies. So it's one thing to be putting in too many calories, too much sugar. It's another thing to alter your hormones like sugar does, because your body just sort of does weird things. And again, you can start to store fat and build fat and lose muscle really in a disproportionate way to the amount of calories or mass of food that you're actually eating. So I remember seeing this ad for the fat person that is at the show, when you go to like a carnival. So they had like the fat lady and the fat guy, and they had a picture of them, but it was an actual article in a newspaper from the 50s. And I'm looking at this picture, the fat guy and the fat woman, and today this would be like a medium at Walmart. Like it's not anything the same. And I know I go back to my early days of nutritional counseling, people would come in overweight, heavy people needing to lose weight. But now people are coming in and they become so morbidly obese, it can become really challenging for them to lose weight. And it really has a lot to do with this overconsumption of sugar and this impact it's having on our body. And then as we get to cancer, how does the insulin, the hormones, and all the sugar end up leading towards a greater likelihood of cancer?
Well, when we look at a cancer cell versus a normal healthy cell, the cancer cell has a completely different metabolism than a normal cell, where the normal cell doesn't necessarily need all of these sugars for its fuel. So now it will, that's the argument people have, like every cell of your body needs sugar. The brain needs sugar. Yes, the brain uses glucose 24 hours a day, but the brain also has other ways. As long as those cells are healthy, it can use other nutrients for its energy sources. So cancer itself, because it has a damaged mitochondria, they are glucose metabolizers. So as we start bringing in, so I can't even tell you the amount of ways sugar can create cancer, but one of the major ways is we know it directly feeds it, number one. Number two is sugar raises our insulin levels, creating that inflammation. Inflammation, when the cells were made up of 60, 70 trillion cells, when those cells become inflamed, then nutrients can't get in, toxins can't get out, the cell becomes hypoxic and ends up turning into a cancer cell. We look at, when we bring in sugar and we start screwing up the hormones, when we get into fat, well, we look at screwing up your hormones. Well, we know majority of fastest growing cancers are hormonal cancers now.
Right.
And I can keep going on, but we could never say that sugar's not impacting our health, our life, creating more cancers, creating more diseases. Considering most diseases are inflammatory. When you keep inflaming something and damaging something over and over and over, that's how we end up with sicknesses and cancers and everything else.
And the good news, and of course the premise of the Max Life Show and all of Maximize Living and everything our doctors do, is that you can do something about this, that you can be at cause in your life. You're empowered to prevent or overcome cancer. And the whole gene thing will drive me crazy, because you can't do anything about who your great-great-great-great-grandfather was, but you can do something, for example, about your weight. And they found that, for example, 60% increase in the likelihood of breast cancer if you're overweight, due to all the hormonal factors you mentioned, as well as the inflammation and the poor diet that leads you to being overweight. We can do something about that. In fact, I saw one Harvard researcher said, it's time to stop even talking about genetics and genes, because one, it's disproven, and two, there's nothing you can do about it. Yet you can, just by simply avoiding sugar, going down a better path, managing your weight, you can avoid cancer.
Yeah, so, and that was amazing when you get into this cancer thing, because we take, the doctor comes in the room and tells somebody, well, this is genetic, and we're like, well, there's nothing I can do, it's genetic. Yeah. That's absolutely not true. It's not your gene, it's how you express your gene. It's whether you turn that gene on or off. They had an amazing study where they took the cancer cells that were genetic. They said this cancer is genetic. They took the DNA out of these cancer cells that were supposedly that turned this cancer cell on because of the DNA. They put it into a normal healthy cell. So if that DNA was what caused this person to get cancer, then what would it have done in the healthy person? Should have caused cancer. And what did it do? It never expressed itself. Yeah. Then they reversed that and they took the normal healthy DNA, someone with no cancer in a cell, and they took that DNA and those genes and put it over here, and what do you think happened in a toxic cancer cell? It turned back into cancer again. So it's not the gene, it's the environment. Our environment turns the gene on or off. So we know this gene thing is gone. Quit blaming your genes. Yes, they can contribute, but it's we pull that trigger or not. We're in charge. We're in control of that.
Yeah, there's tendencies, but it's not a death sentence. There's something you can do about it. And that's the bottom line. When you talk to scientists about the health of the body, the end of the day, if you're looking at under a microscope and there's a healthy environment, those cells will thrive. If you look under a microscope and those cells are in an unhealthy environment, they will not thrive. It's really simple, and we can control our body's own internal environment by avoiding things like toxins and sugars and all these artificial ingredients that we're talking about. And part of course, the other challenge with sugar is just the issue of, again, it's sneaky because it gets hidden in things. Just some of the other names to be aware of: barley malt, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, dextrose, fruit juice, maltose, turbinado, cane, and even natural things like, and we'll maybe talk about this for a second, even natural things like honey, maple syrup, molasses, agave. These also, they're more natural. They have some other things that can be beneficial, but they're still sugar.
Yeah, and gosh, if somebody's in a good, healthy position, absolutely, some really good raw honey has some amazing nutritional components to it. Good, healthy agave. Most agaves now, because it got commercialized, is full of fruit corn syrups now, and so there are some healthy components of it. But when someone's dealing in a cancer, we can't argue the fact. Yes, fruit sugars and honeys are absorbed different in a cancer cell versus a normal cell. But no matter what, any type of sugars we bring in the body are going to create an inflammation no matter what. So for me, all of those, especially in the case of someone dealing with cancer, is to me, and would be there's definitely a no for that. And I would move into the more natural. We're going to talk about more natural sweeteners, the xylitols and the stevias.
Yeah, and we have our core and advanced plan, and the idea of a core plan is if you're a super active person, then more of these natural type sweeteners like an organic, unprocessed honey or maple syrup, in those raw forms. Those things can be used on some regular basis because you're burning them. You have a healthy body. You haven't succumbed to some illness. Then you can use some of that, and you'll find it's beneficial. And the point you're making is that, but if you've got cancer, disease, you've got pain, you've got inflammatory conditions, you've got issues with your immune system, then those sugars, regardless of the type of sugar it is still going to lead to inflammation, still causes a rise in insulin. There's still the same biochemical response to maple or honey than there would be, say, regular sugar in terms of that inflammation and change. So it is, again, why with all these shows it's great to get the books, to hear the information, but it's always why we want you back with a Maximize Living doctor who can help you walk through this process.
Yeah, because, just in general, it doesn't matter whether it's cancer, an autoimmune disease like you talked about. I was on Facebook this morning helping somebody with eczema. No matter what, when those inflammatory conditions, we want to bring down all types of sugars, no matter what. And we want to slow down that inflammatory process. Sugar in general affects the immune system. So we want to make sure that we're getting the body back to health again, especially in the time of any type of crisis. That's why our diets are amazing. And getting into your Maximize Living doctor and go, no, you need to be on this one for now, and then maybe you're ready to move back to this one.
Yeah, I think what people miss, and this is sounding probably like, again, a lot of bad news for people, and even people thinking maybe I'll just get the cancer. But the reality is there are things they can do for sweeteners, for desserts, that still make life great. Like, so I eat way more desserts now on an advanced plan where I'm doing very little carbohydrate whatsoever. I don't know if I have grains more than a couple times every 2 or 3 years. Like, I just don't do it. I avoid sugar because at 48, I feel better than I have my whole life as a result. So, however, I use stevia, I use xylitol, and we cook a lot of desserts with coconut flour, almond flour. So when you say I'm in this ketotic state, when you say I don't do sugars and grains, most people think, well, then that's just a life of abstract misery where you never get to enjoy anything.
I think I'm eating broccoli all day long.
Right. And I know, because you have an amazing wife, Andrea, who cooks and puts a lot of great meals together. The best place on earth to eat is the Major's home.
Amazing.
So tell us a little bit about some good news about what it is they can eat.
Let's just hear it. Tuesday night we do dessert night in our house. So our dessert night is my wife made me a chocolate shake. So you're like, you can have chocolate shakes during this ketosis. We use coconut milk, high in healthy fats, great calories. She put in a little bit of coconut oil. She put in macadamia nuts, which, obviously amazing fats. Then she used a raw cacao, which is, obviously if you ate raw cacao, it's very, very bitter. Yeah. But she put in a raw cacao to give it its chocolate taste in there. And then she uses some xylitol and a little bit of stevia to sweeten everything back up. And to me, then she puts ice in there and makes it taste like a shake to me. So whether it be treats, she does almond butter cups. She does different desserts. I mean, it's amazing. We still get to eat that way, and actually we're eating this, and my kids are eating this. It tastes good, and it's actually making them healthier. They're cancer killing desserts. So that's what I call them.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the weird part. My teenager always says I'm cheating the system. It's like, how could you be eating desserts all day and be getting healthier and leaner? That's like cheating, because normally dessert is cheating, and it's something we know we have to sort of recover from later. In this case, it's actually part of your healthy diet. It's almost a weird sort of thing to think about, but it's amazing. I mean, I'll tell you, I'll probably have 3 or 4. I'll have almond butter cups today. I'll have brownies today. I'll have pudding today. But the pudding's made of avocado and stevia and raw cacao. Everything's got stevia and xylitol to sweeten it up. There's almond flour, coconut flour, and no grain. So let's talk about one last thing here, just because it touches on people's belief about cancer. Right now, they're probably thinking, but why isn't that what my medical doctor says? Or why is that not what conventionally is talked about in science or medicine? Why is this so alternative and unheard of if it works so well? And so one of my freaks of the week here recently was the fact that Tulane University released a study in the Annals of Internal Medicine where they challenged the whole hypothesis of the DASH diet. So the DASH diet, which is this whole grain, low fat diet, which has been the diet that's been taught for the last 4 to 5 decades in the US and around the world, it wins the best diet of the year, this DASH diet, every single year. And it beats out the Mediterranean diet and other diets that promote higher fat and lower carb. So they finally did this study, and they found a radical difference in terms of being better, that when you did more fats, low carb, you lost more weight, you had better cholesterol levels, you were thinner, healthier, leaner, everything was better. And the reason it's my freak of the week, and it kind of ticks me off, is it's what we've been teaching for a couple of decades now, and yet this is big news to medicine.
Yeah, and Monday, we were just talking about it earlier, Chicago Tribune did an article in my area, which is a huge newspaper, obviously, some people around the world, but the article title was We Got Egg in Our Face. And what they're talking about is that we got it completely wrong, just like Tulane's saying, we got it completely wrong, that eating healthy fats make us healthier, not sicker. And yet, these are the same people who told us for 40 years that sugar doesn't cause cancer, doesn't matter what we eat. Yeah. But you were wrong about all those other things. This is your life right here. This is our health, which is the most important thing. And we're going to keep listening to old, outdated science when we know, based on science, what is working and what isn't now.
Yeah, one of the things that I always go back to when people are kind of challenging, say, the maximized living way with sort of the conventional medical way or other things they're hearing, is just come to one of our seminars. I was having a meeting prior to one of our events, and all of our doctors and some of their patients and staff, everybody, all the Maximize Living people are running around, and these people I was meeting with, they didn't know anything about our company, and they said, is there like an athletic event or like a modeling event going on? Because there's all these just ripped, lean, good-looking people. And I said, that's our doctors and their family. There's no, it's not a professional athletic event or anything like that. This is what we look like because of the way we live. And so in that room, when you come to our event and there's over 1,000 people there, you don't see high percentages of cancer. You don't see overweight people. You don't see sick people. You don't see autoimmune. You don't have 1 in 2 dying of a heart attack. You don't have any of these things in that group because of the way that we're living. So I would rather trust the people that are doing it and experiencing all of these great benefits from it than say, well, this is just what my doctor says.
Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to, looking at the science that's there. You'll find whatever you're looking for. So if you want to find, research that says sugar's okay, you'll probably find it, but it doesn't make sense, right? So if you want to look for something, you'll probably find it. But what I want to look for is, I'm not going to listen to a doctor who's not healthy himself, they know nothing about our nutrition. I'm not going to talk to a nutritionist like when we were in the hospital who's telling me that it's okay during cancer with weeks to live to put high fructose corn syrup inside. I mean, like, we just have to go back to what truly makes sense to you. And if it doesn't make sense to you and you truly want you and your family healthy, then you got to go a different way.
Yeah, if you find yourself always on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect. There's no doubt that if you want to be healthy, you can't get sucked into what the rest of the world is doing. I'd suggest Maximize Living.